Here's the big question this show answers. How do we leverage technology and human science to positively impact our personal and professional life? The Tech Human Experience has the answer. Here's your host, Inc. 5000 tech founder, neuroscience junkie, and Navy SEAL wannabe, Javier Guerra.
Hello, my fellow tech humans. Today's guest is a retired USAA executive leader and Alamo PMI Fellow. He has showcased exceptional leadership in project management, education, and community involvement. As a university professor, author, and serial board president, he inspires us through his dedication. Please join me in welcoming Kevin D. Martin.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be back with you again, Javier.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure talking with you and picking your brain on some of these topics. So to get us started today, I wanted to talk to you about this study that PricewaterhouseCoopers did. And in this study, they found that nearly 60% of organizations struggle to bridge the gap between their strategic plan and its day-to-day implementation. What are your thoughts on this? And, specifically, how can organizations maybe improve their execution in this rapidly changing environment?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that study, but it doesn't surprise me at all. In the corporate world, there has always been this scenario, and I've been speaking for years, and I have a slide that a lot of people take a picture of. But basically, it's this grinder. Every year there's annual planning, strategic planning, mm-hmm. and then some people do operational planning. Well, when you strategically plan, you expect to meet most of those goals. And what I have seen in this slide that I show is all of that plan goes down the tubes quickly for a variety of reasons. Lack of understanding, lack of linkage, mission, vision, values. People heard you say a word, but they interpreted it differently based on their understanding of that particular word. And so there's something that I'm terming strategic execution excellence. And that is the ability to see and understand in a very complex world, because there are more things to manage, and technology is getting more complex. Human interaction is getting more complex. And so that doesn't surprise me at all. And I think as a professional and, a researcher all my career, I read 50 books a year for that exact reason. I'm always looking for ways to do it with better excellence. I mean, if you're a professional, you should strive to be the best you can possibly be, and that means you never quit learning.
Yep, lifelong learner.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you. I'm one of my top 5 strengths is definitely learner. So, my wife jokes that I'm just like consuming information like the Cookie Monster or something.
Yeah,
I'm constantly reading, taking courses. Yeah.
So when you're wired that way, it's just your nature. I'm retired. I'm 65 years old, and I just got a certification. The question is why? What are you going to do with that? I don't know. I'm going to do something better. That's always been my motto. I'm not as good as I'll be tomorrow, but I'm better than I was yesterday. That's all I can tell you.
That's a good one. I like that. I'm not. What was it again?
Sure. People say, "How are you doing?" And I say, "Well, I'm doing pretty good, but I'm not as good as I'm going to be tomorrow. But I'm better than I was yesterday." I'm not as good as I'm going to be tomorrow, but I'm better than I was yesterday. Nice. Because every single day I learn something. Some of them are painful lessons, and some of them are fun lessons, and some of them are, hard to absorb, and some of them make you think differently. I mean, but I'm always striving to be better.
Yeah, my biggest thing right now is I'm actually using learning as a motivation to go to the gym early in the morning, right? So get up 4:30 in the morning, and then be at the gym by 5:00.
Yeah.
And if I don't go to the gym, well, I don't get to listen to the whatever. I don't get to watch the courses that I'm taking, or I don't get to listen to the audiobooks that I'm currently reading, unless I'm at the gym, because I have both my ear pods in, working
block
out
that time.
Yeah. And so it's motivating me.
It is. And, people always go, how do you read so many books a year? Well, it helps if you read 1,600 words a minute. That's just speed. The second thing is I try to read 30 minutes every day, no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's usually right before I go to sleep because my brain tends to process it, like it won't let it go. And so some of my best ideas are in the shower the morning after I've read something that my subconscious ruminated on all night long. So I try to make this old brain work all the time, even when I'm sleeping.
Yeah, having Alexa, it annoys my wife because I have Alexa blaring in the bathroom and I'm in the shower. Oops, I just woke up Alexa.
That's too funny. I have the same problem.
I have Alexa like in almost every room in the house, and in the bathroom while I'm in the shower, I can listen to audiobooks, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes because like other times I just shut it off and ideas come up. For sure. It's like meditation in action.
Mine are usually, when the alarm goes off, it goes right into my news updates, like what happened while I was sleeping. It'll tell me my schedule. So again, nice to have that technology, right?
Yeah, good. There's pros and cons.
It is.
But, okay, so let's dive into today's topic. Today's topic is proper planning in a VUCA world when it matters most. And for those of you who don't know what VUCA means, it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Right. And so in this episode, we'll discuss the importance of strategic planning, adaptability, and data-driven decision-making in today's VUCA environment.
Yeah. So thanks for that. Volatility. I mean, what does that mean? What does volatility have to do with? And that is systems. Everybody is a system. Everything we live. Humans are systems. Mm-hmm. And so a system that's volatile has a range of movement, right? In its execution. And we all are humans. Some days we have good days and sometimes we have bad days. That's volatility, right? Because if you always have good days, it's not a very volatile environment. All right. The next one is uncertainty. And I think uncertainty is probably one of the things that has changed recently for most of us because we don't know what to count on. Like what's for sure these days? Like what's certainty? The opposite of uncertainty is certainty. So what's certain these days? What do they say? Death and taxes are certain. After that, everything else is
pretty much.
Yeah. So how do you fight against uncertainty? We'll talk about that. The next one is complexity. And that is, the world is getting more complex, right? More things to manage, more things that distract you from your day. So complexity is the C in the VUCA. And then the last one is ambiguity. And that is when you look at something, you think you know what you're looking at because your brain tries to process it, put it in a box, understand it. But sometimes you don't really understand it fully. Let's put it that way, right? So you see it one way initially, and then if you study it long enough, hey, it's that, but it's also this other thing. All right. So that's the VUCA. And I think I started tracking the VUCA stuff probably around 1990, 86, something like that, in the paper. It wasn't ever called VUCA back then. But the War College put it into place back in the 90s, 97, United States War College. And so the military operate in a VUCA world, right? They're very volatile, right?
Absolutely.
They don't know things about the operating environment that the military is in. So they're trying to prepare their leaders for this 4 aspects. And then what can they do about it? And then in 2001, the thing that solidified it, now we're talking 2001 was 22 years ago. The 9/11 event made us look at that event and say, wow, we thought that we had and understood and knew the capabilities of our enemies. And man, did we misinterpret that, right? We didn't think it was possible to fly, planes because they had shown a propensity for doing that, right? In the past, right? They tried to drive a truck in and park it in the garage and stuff like that. And so, your competitors are looking for ways to beat you. I mean, that's the message to business leaders.
Oh, yeah.
Is,
Always.
if you aren't busy managing risk, your competitors are coming, right? And if you just set it and forget it or become complacent, they'll eventually catch you because they're working hard. All right. So let's end there. That's VUCA, right? That's the observation that leaders said, wow, how do we get better at that? Well, there's 4 elements to combating those 4 maladies. Mm-hmm. So for volatility, you have to have some kind of vision. So if your system's doing this, good days, bad days, good days, bad days, good days, bad days, right? You ever have a medium day? What does that feel like? And how do you have more of those? No high highs, no low lows. That sounds better, doesn't it? So, what can you do to improve the volatility or reduce the volatility? And that is have a vision. And like you said, you plan your day out, right? You have a vision for how your day is going to go. And if you fall off of that plan, it feels more volatile. Like I thought I was going to do this, but then this got in the way. And we have more of those interruptions more now.
With VUCA in the context of VUCA, how can leaders really effectively leverage technology to better assess economic and operational risks in the environment or in the world?
Yeah, so responding to the VUCA condition, volatility, you can have better vision. Where are we going, right? To take some of that variance out of the volatility, right? Stay closer to the center point. Have a better vision, and that can help with volatility. As far as uncertainty, if you look at the opposite of uncertainty, you have to improve understanding, and that is make sure that you use the right words, and that the use of and your understanding of the words as a leader that you use is the same understanding that the people that you're speaking to have. And so, the English language is pretty imprecise. You can say, have a nice day, and the tone that you say it in can say things that you didn't intend. Words like agile. I always joke that people are like, oh, are you doing agile? And everybody's like, oh, yeah, I'm agile. And to me, that's like saying, are you a human? Oh, yeah, I'm human. I don't know anything. And so, make sure that we understand, what does agile mean to you? People come back and say, well, we need more agility in our organization. Well, I always ask, well, how would you know if we had it? I mean, what are we measuring on?
Yep.
Is it adaptability? Is it software engineering? I mean, what would be the attributes? So that creating that understanding and use of terminology within your sphere of influence and the people who listen to you will help all the people who follow you and execute operationally for you understand what you mean by a particular word. Because, again, the English language is so imprecise that we assume that everybody has the understanding. I use when I teach this at the university, I say a phrase. It's like a project management phrase. Let's all go have a nice lunch. Sounds like a great thing. I mean, how would you have trouble executing that? Every word I have in that sentence is ambiguous. Let's all. Who's that? In the room, in the world. I mean, go. How are we going to get there? What does go mean? Let's all go. How are we going? Are we going by plane, train, automobile? I mean, what does go mean? And then a nice lunch. Well, what is a nice lunch? And I promise you, everybody that listens to this has a different connotation for what a nice lunch is. I joke. A nice lunch for a project manager or a busy leader is anything not eaten at your desk, doing 7 other things. I mean, it could be a peanut butter sandwich. If you just sit on a picnic table and eat it by yourself without interruption, that's a nice lunch.
Yeah, I just had a conversation literally before this recording, and I'm leading an executive team through a few workshops at an international bank, and we were just talking about communication, that's one of the hardest skills, right? Everybody's different. Everybody has their own perception of reality. Everybody has their own, methodologies, but it makes me think of a method of duplication. And I forgot who coined this, but in a method of communicating it called duplication, it's like when I communicate something to someone else, I ask them to repeat it back to me. Okay, what did you hear?
Yeah.
What did you hear that I needed? And then they repeat it back to me in their own words until we get it ironed out and we're both on the same page. Yeah. Because if you don't do that, it can cause so many problems.
It is truly a lost art to do that. Yeah. And time puts pressure on us, right? We have so much, we can only give them so much of our time. But if you communicate the wrong thing, it's actually more detrimental than if you take the time to clarify it. There's a great book. I told you I read a lot of books. There's a great book called The Lost Art of Listening. And there's 5 levels of listening. And if you ever want to test this, just take 5 people and go watch any movie and then debrief, what did you see in the movie? I promise you, you watch the same movie, you will get 5 different interpretations about that movie. And that, it's not important. It's just entertainment. But people see things in the context of, as you said, their understanding. Yeah. And so it's fun thing. So that's how you drive out uncertainty, is you create understanding to make sure that your messaging is clear. And it is the hardest job for leaders. The next one has to do with complexity. And that is, our systems are becoming more and more complex. There's more components to a day, to a process. More integration of data and information creates complexity. And so the way to combat complexity is to discuss and ensure clarity. Like, what do you see when you look at this? What do you see? And most people looking at a system that is integrated behind the scenes only see the front-facing interaction, the human interaction part of it, right? But behind a complex system is data, processing, rules, regulations. I mean, there's all kinds of things about complexity that you need to understand and clarify. Are there any constraints? Are there any assumptions? And one of the ways I do that, I have a phrase that I coined, which I use throughout my career to say, how do you know? I mean, if somebody says this is the way it is, my four words that I put together was, how do you know? And what I'm asking is, tell me the clarity with which you arrived at that conclusion, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And so that's how I drive out in my VUCA world. How do you know what you're looking at is the real thing? And then there's ambiguity. And the way that ambiguity is about, I didn't see that coming. And what I see a lot of leaders doing is they do what they've always done to get and to be successful, right? And so they just stay there. Well, the world is happening, and so they become reactive. I got to do this. I have to react to some event that happened. And the way to combat that is, you can use the word agility, but I'm using it in the physical sense, and I could actually interpret that word to say adaptability. So rather than reacting, you should adapt quicker and forecast where you want to go, not react to where you need to go.
Yeah. So in that, go ahead.
Well, and so when you do those 4 things, right? There's 4 things, 4 dials you can turn, right? As a leader of trying to manage this complex world, is you can choose to change one and not focus on the other, or you can change all 4. The question is, how much change do you want to drive, lead, and experience as the leader of your group? I mean, maybe you just change one thing and make that better, and so you don't have to change them all, because there is such a thing as change saturation, right? You can't be changing everything. Like, the world doesn't work. Like, what if you got up and there was no gravity in the world? Okay, I freak you out, right? Everything's floating. You're like, hey, what happened? That's the kind of stuff it feels like. Some people are like, what changed? I tell people everything is changing, right?
Yeah. So from that, from the importance of adaptability, and, problem solving, are there any technologies that you've used to really help maybe either conduct root cause analysis or help you to, take some sort of a problem and then continuously adapt, based off the data that you're getting back, measuring that problem in some capacity?
Yeah, probably
technology
the best
or framework.
Yeah. The best thing I can do, and this goes for anything, is benchmark. Talk to people who are like you or in the same kind of, and that says talk to a community that might be dealing with similar things that you are, and say, hey, this complexity, this VUCA world is killing me. I mean, I don't even know what to start changing. And so you might hear from somebody else who are the courageous leaders, the ones who just jump out and go, it's too painful to stay where we are. I need to start changing something, and find out what they're experimenting on, and be courageous enough to run an experiment, hold everything else the same and change one of those attributes and see if you don't have a better experience. And so I think that's probably, have a scientific method, and be curious, like, how could tomorrow be better? If you start with that premise, you're curious about how to make tomorrow better in some small way, and just start working on that. And, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say what they say about 1,000-mile journey, which VUCA world can feel like, because you just never run out of things to quit working on, is you got to take the first step to make something better than it was yesterday.
Yes, that's definitely a problem that I had to overcome after, many mistakes and wasting a lot of time is, just take one step at a time, baby steps, and take action. And take continuous action.
Yeah.
Don't wait until it's perfect. Don't look at the whole big picture and try to solve the entire thing. Just move forward.
Yeah.
If you're going in the wrong direction, then pivot and go in the right direction. Or in a different direction and try that way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, and a lot of it has to do with our individual, neuroplasty. I mean, it's neuroscience. Some people want all the information before they decide to do something, right? Because they don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah.
But once you learn that, hey, if I just start making little bitty mistakes, like I tried this and it didn't work, you might find something that got you close to where you want to be, and you just tweak it and it's better. And so that's running those small experiments, and if you're having, your ability to do that, to build that courage and that willingness to, make a small mistake, you can do that in your own personal life. I mean, that's where I would start, is changing the way because you influence you better than you influence anyone else. And so if you have that mindset of, damn, today was painful, what can I do to not experience today in the future? Then you start building this, thicker skin to learn, not to fail, but to learn what doesn't work. And that's the difference between a failure and learning. I mean, just say, well, I tried this and it didn't work. Okay. Put that in a journal so that when you feel this way again, you go, I tried that and it didn't work then. I wonder why it would work now.
Yeah.
So that answers my question. How do you know? And just be willing to run some experiments. That's how leaders start changing and finding the courage, honestly, to not wait for perfect information. That's the whole 9/11. We wish we would have learned a little earlier. We might have been able to prevent things, and unfortunately, it was a painful lesson.
It makes me think about, what you're saying about the journal. It makes me think about what Einstein said is, the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over and expecting different results.
Yeah.
And so a journal can be a good tool to kind of go back and remember and recall, okay, I keep doing this over and over the same way. I need to do something different, right? Like I need to go about this in a different way of problem solving. And on that note, how do you think leaders can really develop the necessary skills to adapt rapidly to changes?
Well, the number one thing is to be curious. I mean, I think the number one potential problem for leaders is to think they have all the answers. Okay, you don't.
It's the most dangerous mindset.
You have to have all the answers. That's strike number 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
and that's creating this concept, and it's in this new world, which is, you hear words like be vulnerable, right? Just say, damn, I don't know, but I'm running experiments to try to be better. And talk to the people that you directly influence and say, I just want y'all to know I'm working on this problem, And so that helps with clarity, that helps with focus, that helps with, I don't have all the answers, but I realize it's painful for all of us to continue to do what we're doing now. Those are the kind of things, and then have counselors around you to say, that's a good idea, or I might not find that, because again, leaders become myopic and focused. You can be too focused. You can be too much of a perfectionist, right? Mm-hmm. And so any strength can become a weakness, if overly developed, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And, some of the things that I do is really learning to get out of my head. Right. It's because when things are changing quickly, and I'm actually going through a time right now that I'm driving a lot of change and tweaking a lot of things for optimization and streamlining team efforts. Uh-huh. And, when things are moving very quickly, I can get into this zone of just go, go, go. Right. And what I say is I tell my team, I say, look, when I get into this mode and I'm go, 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 and that's really more of my natural state, I just go, and I can have a tendency to just kind of steamroll over potentially things or people. Yeah. And I tell them, you guys need to say, hold on, let's stop and take a breath, right? Let's slow down a second. Yeah. Let's think about this, right? And so then, I'll do things like daily meditation practices, or just getting into my safe boxes, right? Of doing something that's kind of like meditation in action, whether it's going to the gym, change running, to slow down my systems and just kind of like reset and be more present instead of just go, go, go all the time. Yeah.
And that's half the battle, right? Is awareness, right? Mm-hmm. You have to know that you might have a problem before you'll ever accept changing it, and sometimes, one of the other problems is, leaders thinking that everybody's wired like them, driven like them, motivated like them, and that's where you get people like, they say about people that work for them, well, they didn't get it. And I'm like, well, they're just not wired like you. Maybe you didn't lead them well enough. Maybe they aren't engaged. Maybe they aren't motivated because they just see it as a job. They're not here with the vision that you share, which is your internal spark and makes you run, like the Energizer Bunny. Maybe they need to find their own Energizer reason to be and reason to jump out of bed and, produce. But you see it a lot of times. You'll see people who do that for a few decades and they truly burn out, right? Mm-hmm. They got two speeds, all the way or broke, and in the shop, right? I need to take 4 months off because, I have bad habits that have cost my health, my relationships, my ability to see. And that, that's some of the stuff. Again, this all goes back to how we think. I mean, it's a lot of human in this. And there's a great book by Patrick Lencioni called The Ideal Team Player, and he triumvirates it, right? So one is called humble, hungry, and smart. And smart doesn't have to do with intelligence. It has to do with, being around people and collaborating and, being intelligent. I would call it the EQ, the emotional quotient, right?
Yeah.
So it's not the IQ, but it's the EQ. And then humble is don't think you know everything. And then hungry, like you mentioned, some people just aren't as hungry as others. I always think of the Hungry Hippo, the kids game where it's just,
love that game. There's a life-size one somewhere.
Yeah, some people are wired like that. Girl.
Yeah.
And other people are like, I don't want to play that game because, I run at a different speed. But it doesn't mean that they can't be motivated. And then you get into all the, like you said, strength finders and things like that.
Yeah.
People who are woos or just energized, passionate. And, those are people that blast off and then go to zero. And so balance is, no matter which element you're talking about, is good. All right. Don't think you know it all, but know something. Mm-hmm. Don't think you can do it all, but do something.
Yeah. And it's interesting how you say that about the two speeds, right? Because I would say probably for the past almost 10 years as I've kind of held back a bit so that I'm not like that, because that's typically how I would be, is like all in or just like all out, right?
Yeah.
So to speak. And for the past 10 years, I've kind of been very conscious of being even keeled. But now this year I've kind of stepped in and kind of turned up the volume, but I'm still, cause back when I was in my 30s, I think probably early 30s, I learned that like, hey, like I need to stop going at this pace. And so now I'm much more aware of it, of like I can go, but I need to cut it off like 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
and like turn it off, spend time with family, and
so that you have
much
balance.
easier to turn it off and on.
Yeah. That's healthy. I'm sure there was something that made you have that realization that it was better to slow it down at sometimes, right? And get the benefits of that slower pace. Other people, honestly, are the other way. They are slow and they are there and they just need a little boost to have some passion and, jump in. I think
part of it was too, is I was kind of stepping out of the way for other leaders that I was bringing in and kind of giving them the reins of like, okay, I'm going to let you kind of lead it your way and support you. That's right. Nice. And so, part of it was that, right.
Development. Developing others. That's a great leadership skill.
Yeah. And then, along those lines, you talked about culture, right? So, in the context of VUCA, how do you think leaders can foster a team culture that embraces adaptability and resilience? Like any tools or any advice you could give there?
Yeah, let me think about that one for a second. Culture is huge. Culture is that things that you feel in an organization that is not written down anywhere. There's no policies on it. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about culture. And cultures develop and it's curated and it's promoted by leadership. Leadership's responsible for culture. And so the question is, what can you do? I think based on what we've talked about, it starts with mission, vision, and values. Who are we? What are we? And why? What do we value? Right. So if you work for an organization that values that high energy, always on, think about. I'm trying to think of a really high stress. Think about air traffic controllers, right? We all hope they don't have a bad day, right? Or a day they don't.
Yes, yeah.
And so how do they maintain that pace? I'm sure they do it differently, but those kind of roles, it's in the nature of their work and it's just accepted as, how that's how the job gets executed, right? A lot of companies, were hybrid long before COVID, and we're doing successful things with it, right? They had learned and that was their culture. And then there are leaders who say, no, you have to be in the office. And then there's everything in between. You have to be here 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week. So everybody's trying to figure out what's the right culture regarding where you do your work for our organization. And there is no one size fits all. Everybody's going to figure out where that sweet spot is.
Absolutely. So, in your opinion, what technology do you think the world needs that does not exist yet? And maybe, I don't know if you can think about that, maybe in the context of VUCA, right? Like maybe you could help with VUCA or some aspect of VUCA.
Yeah. Let me think about where, some emerging technology. I always read, so I read the Wall Street Journal, I read Harvard Business Review, I read Fast Company. You look at people who are pushing the envelope with new technology. And so, AI and that stuff is kind of hot right now, but, AI as a concept has been around since the 1950s. It just hasn't developed as rapidly as it has in the past few years. And that's because we have more data scientists, more integration. We're integrating systems that couldn't be integrated before. The speed of the network, data speeds, data storage, those kind of things contribute to that ability. So one of the things that I think about is how could you use the AI to combat, crime? How could you use it to enhance medical predictions? How could you use it? And this is all predicated on feedback loops, right? Because data and is data, and without processing it, it becomes just noise. But when you can process it and make that information usable to decision makers, then you can forecast more accurately. And we've had things like this around for a long time. I mean, just look at weather reports. People watched the weather at one time, right? To try to determine what should I wear, how should I dress, right? And in Texas, you can dress one way in the morning and completely differently in the afternoon. And you got to plan for that. So those kind of things is finding the ethical and proper uses of technology to solve problems that humans haven't been able to solve. Computers and what is called artificial intelligence is just people writing software behind the scenes, putting in regulations, putting in constraints, and trying to use huge amounts of data to provide information to leaders to make better things. So, just take the medical area. How long have we been trying to cure this thing called cancer? I wonder if there isn't applications with AI and the access to global information and data about solving that problem and any other world problem, world hunger, access to water. I mean, all kinds of things.
Yeah, and it's definitely coming, right? With all the EMR, the medical electronic medical records, kind of integrating now. Yeah. Like those data lakes are gonna, maybe turn into data oceans. But it makes me think about, the data governance, right? Is that so many organizations have all of this data, and they say data is the new oil, but they don't necessarily have it organized effectively to where an AI, plugin could come in and digest that information and actually make some sense out of it. So it just made me think about it. I wonder if somebody's going to invent an AI that can go in and like clean up
they already are.
This data, and make it, more effective.
Yeah, let me tell you about how that's already happening. In the natural language processing. So, when I was working in corporate world, I mean, intelligent voice recognition, IVRs, right? Everybody's got that in front of their call centers, right, as the first landing page. And we've been doing natural language processing since, I don't know, 70s, maybe the 80s, definitely in the 80s. That's 40 years of that. And it used to be press 1 for this, press 2 for that. Okay. With data scientists and with people who look for trends, now we can gather intent. So if I say, I want my money, they have your account. So the question is, which of your money are you trying to get to? So rather than say, okay, which one, it can say, would you like your savings or your checking? Because that's where your money is. If you say pay a bill, it used to just say pay a bill. And then it was like, okay, which bill? If they know your bills, you would like, oh, do you want to pay your insurance bill or your phone bill? You know what I'm saying? So it's getting better.
Yeah.
And that's because they have access. And the problem is, and my latest certification is on humane technology, and that is, if you collect a lot of data about people, that sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? Right? You know me better. You can.
To some people.
The problem is there are people who can use your data to influence you in nefarious ways. Hide some data from you, show you data they want. Hide some products from you, show you data they want you to buy. So you see how it can be used for not so good?
Oh, yeah.
That's where I think, that's where I think lots of opportunities are. And they're already building. I mean, like I said, we have pre-processors for natural language. Who's calling? What do we know about them? What might they want? That limits the range of possible solutions, right?
Absolutely.
So those are the kind of things I think that, and it doesn't take long. The speed of adoption in this area is super fast. And the faster you learn, the faster you can provide the right service. And I think what's missing is the laws and the things like that to prevent people from collecting data and using it nefariously.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out for sure. So,
Yeah.
Kevin, we're coming up on time here. So, what are you up to right now, and how can people reach you?
I read a lot. I talk a lot. I have, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find, Kevin D. Martin, PMP. And, I write stuff every day about stuff I'm reading. So I also curate a magazine on Flipboard called the Alamo Connection. And I put stuff like Fast Company. And so if you go to Flipboard, which is an app you can download, I curate digital media. It's a magazine I created, and it's all about stuff that we talk about now. And if I find something very interesting, that's how I tell the world who follows me. And then you can connect with me on, just email. You can email me at kevtr6@gmail, or find me at kevin.martin, 2, @utsa.edu. And, I just stay curious. And if you're curious or you want to know what I'm thinking, it's a good way to do it. Or if you want me to talk to you about things I'm not thinking about, but you are, I'd be happy to do that too.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Kevin. And audience, please be sure to check out his work and follow him on social media. Social media handles will be in the show description. And, just to recap, today we dove into planning in a VUCA world, discussing the role of technology and human science in navigating uncertainty. We highlighted the use of technology for risk assessment, to root cause analysis and adaptable frameworks, as well as the importance of adaptability and emotional intelligence and team culture. Really, for this information to benefit you, we need to take action. Any information is only as good as the action that it's put to use. And so, make sure that you really kind of reflect on your own career, your own life, and really think about your preparedness for managing uncertainty and change, because more change is coming, and it's going to continue to come at a faster pace. And so as humans, we need to get good at change, and it's always best to, be prepared and have some sort of a plan to be able to handle that change and continuously improve ourselves. So last but not least, don't forget to help out your fellow tech humans. Share this podcast and follow me on LinkedIn at Javier Guerra 360. Again, social media handles will be in the show description. See you next time on the Tech Human Experience.
The Tech Human Experience